I think I'm beginning to understand. Dr. Fauci used his position to have millions of dollars donated for the creation of a virus that would attack mankind. Then he used his position to predict that during the presidency of Donald Trump, there would be a massive pandemic outbreak of a virus. And then he used his position under Donald Trump to impose a lockdown and to give advice on how we're to deal with this pandemic. And with his current position with Bill Gates, he's using the virus to bring in the vaccine that the entire world must have. Dr. Fauci, you're fired.
He's a medical doctor. He's no conservative. None of us voted for him. So why does Dr. Anthony Fauci have such say over the future of our country? And what is the connection between Fauci and the population-controlling Bill Gates Foundation?
I have a certain something that is hard for me to put in words, but it's a sense that everything we know is not what it seems.
Washington, D.C. is definitely in Hollywood. From my research, there's only a few people that control all the content. I started realizing that reality is 20 times more interesting than Hollywood.
And that something's going on much bigger than this virus.
Did any member of the cabinet see that intelligence from our military, yes or no?
As I have said, Mr. Speaker, our intelligence sharing is very important.
The honourable member for Carleton. Question was and is, did any member of the cabinet see that military intelligence, yes or no? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, part of the basis on which we are able to work closely with our partners, including when it comes to sharing intelligence, is sharing with Canadians only what we are able to do.
Carleton. We know that the intelligence exists, and we know that the military warned the government of the dangers of the coronavirus in early January. After January 22nd, how many people did this government allow into Canada from the Hubei province, the province from which the virus originated? How many? Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to border controls, our government is very aware of the importance of ensuring that people coming into the country today are subject to mandatory quarantine.
Do you envision that we're going to have multiple waves of shutdowns, lockdowns, closures of the economy, and how can we handle those kinds of constant shutdowns?
I think even after we're through this first wave, we will need to remain vigilant and we will need to bring in different measures. Normality, as it was before, will not come back full on until we get a vaccine for this. And as you say, that could be a very long way off.
Much bigger than just our government here in Canada, but that it's actually global.
Today, I'm instructing my administration to halt funding of the World Health Organization while a review is conducted to assess the World Health Organization's role in severely mismanaging and covering up the spread of the coronavirus. Had the WHO done its job to get medical experts into China to objectively assess the situation on the ground and to call out China's lack of transparency, the outbreak could have been contained at its source with very little death.
Let me just show you a snapshot of the WHO. It's rotten from the top. The chairman, Dr. Tedros, do you know who he actually gave a goodwill ambassadorship to? Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe. The backlash was so strong he had to rescind it. This guy is from the Marxist Revolutionary Party in Ethiopia. He was part of a regime there that had really brutal crackdowns, human rights atrocities galore.
If you look at someone like Fauci, he's a guy who architected the big lie that HIV is responsible for AIDS. And it's a much deeper discussion, but he built his entire career on that. not talking about the fact it's the suppression of the immune system. When people's immune system gets suppressed, you can react to all sorts of exogenous things coming in. But you're talking about a guy who's embedded into the deep state. And he's your typical example of the worst of the modern scientific establishment.
In 2017, he was documented at Georgetown University saying that there will be a pandemic that this presidency will face, that this term will face. How did he know that in 2017 that something was going to happen in 2018, 19, or 2020? You can't predict the market from 3 days from today, what's going to happen. How did he know that there was going to be a pandemic?
Jeffrey Epstein may be dead, but this story isn't. A shocking new report from the New York Times sheds light on the connection between Microsoft founder Bill Gates and the late Jeffrey Epstein. After Gates' name came up in connection with Epstein and MIT Media Lab, Gates gave a statement to the Wall Street Journal where he insisted he did not have any business relationship or friendship with Epstein. But new reporting from the New York Times outlines numerous meetings between Gates and Epstein.
I feel like we're on a precipice of literally going over a cliff.
And that actual decision of, okay, let's go and give this vaccine to the entire world, governments will have to be involved because there will be some risk and indemnification needed before that can be decided on.
If you still look at the numbers right now, the number of people that have died from COVID-19 compared to the reported numbers now, not the misinformation, but the reported numbers are still less than the seasonal flu. But then you take into case that the CDC is changing their mandate on how you report death, that doctors and hospitals are being told to change the way that you list the cause of death.
A senator and a medical doctor from Minnesota says he's being ordered to lie about COVID-19 deaths. Why is that? And finally, Pope Francis says the whole pandemic is Mother Nature's revenge for climate change.
If we just keep on accepting all of these things and we don't see that there is a complete world agenda to shut down common sense.
There's a very small group of people that influence all the companies that we watch.
Exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
But they're using this to get what they want in their agenda passed. Global control, global solutions.
To shut down proper thinking on things.
Every patient I've prescribed it to has been very, very ill, and within 8 to 12 hours, they were basically symptom-free.
Some people are saying it's a hoax and it's fake news. It's not, it's real. Why are they not pushing this on TV? There's a big reason for it, because your saving grace is going to be a vaccine that's never had any safety or efficacy studies done to it.
Turns out the flu vaccine isn't that effective in elderly people. Most of the benefit comes from younger people not spreading it because they're vaccinated.
And to literally imprison us and make us isolated, if not in real prisons, for doing things that go against the government's issues, but being imprisoned in our homes.
But what is happening here? This is what we're seeing all over the United States. A man was handcuffed in front of his daughter at Brighton Park for allegedly violating social distancing. The guy was arrested at a park with his daughter, and even around other countries around the world. Civil liberties are being trounced, they're being stomped on.
First of all, for the past 21 years, I'm feeding the homeless mentality to people that are living under the bridges and bushes in a South Calgary, and I started over 30 ministries like this. It's called Street Church. We are taking the church to the streets, and at the same time we're feeding thousands of people every single week. I have been doing this for the past 21 years, and of course that's what I was doing on Friday when 12 armed officers with gloves, tasers, ready to tackle me down came announcing that this gathering is illegal. I was absolutely shocked because in a time of crisis, we believe that the church should be out there, should be feeding the poor and helping the community.
He's allowed to stand back from me a little bit. I need 8 feet.
Whoa.
I need 8 feet. Stand back. Okay?
Or what?
Stand
You're
back.
gonna threaten me and abuse me?
Hey, guys. Do not do that.
Tell him not to touch me.
6 feet away for everybody.
Back up now.
That's for everybody.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. I have spent dozens and dozens of hours editing. This guy on the back here, that's Dr. Fauci. And there's something that the whole world is waiting to hear, and that's Donald Trump's words. Dr. Fauci, you're fired.
Thank you, Mr. President. U.S. intelligence is saying this week that the coronavirus likely came from a level 4 lab in Wuhan. There's also another report that the NIH, under the Obama administration in 2015, gave that lab $3.7 million in a grant. Why would the U.S. give a grant like that to China?
The Obama administration gave them a grant of $3.7 million. I've been hearing about that. And we've instructed that if any grants are going to that area, we will end that grant very quickly.
So what is recently being discovered is that in 2015, $3.7 million was given to the lab in Wuhan. The next clip's going to show you that in 2014, they had decided they put a moratorium on any funds going to labs to create viruses. It was decided, why would we do that? But in 2015, Dr. Fauci decided they would send $3.7 million to fund that. Is it any wonder that Donald Trump has retweeted tweets that say, fire Fauci?
Is this the same topic we're talking about here? This news is just breaking?
Yes, this is exactly right. So it goes back to 2014. The U.S. government decided, based upon certain virologists at that time, saying that, look, there's no justification for this kind of research. There's a potential for it to cause harm, cause a pandemic. So there's no justification for us to do this type of research. So the government passed a moratorium in 2014. Fauci approved approved budgets to be monies to be sectioned for this type of research. So basically, and I'm getting really, every time I think about this, it gets me really flustered because I'm so angry that he basically broke the law. He more than broke the law. He created this entire cascade that we're seeing with the world shutdown was created by this initial aspect back in 2015. He broke the law. He went against government moratoriums. He took taxpayer money and he funded research that has now led to the COVID-19. In 2017, he was documented at Georgetown University saying that there will be a pandemic that this presidency will face, that this term will face. How did he know that in 2017 that something was going to happen in 2018, 19, or 2020? You can't predict the market from 3 days from today, what's going to happen. How did he know that there was going to be a pandemic? He stated the president of this president will face a pandemic. The exact quotes, I don't want to say the exact words. You guys have the video footage.
There is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that. But also there will be a surprise outbreak. There will be a surprise outbreak. There will be a surprise outbreak.
When somebody starts making these type of statements, and then they were involved with the breaking of the law to fund the research that American taxpayers paid for, that then goes to Wuhan and now trying to create this diversion and say that it was China.
So at best, Americans are funding people who are lying to us, and at worst, we're funding people who we knew had problems handling pathogens, who then birthed a monster virus onto the world.
Ask Dr. Fauci, could you address these suggestions or concerns that this virus was somehow man-made, possibly came out of a laboratory in China? You studied this virus. What are the prospects of that?
Yeah. There was a study recently that we can make available to you where a group of highly qualified evolutionary virologists looked at the sequences there and the sequences in bats as they evolve, and the mutations that it took to get to the point where it is now is totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human. So, I mean, the paper will be available. I don't have the authors right now, but we can make that available too.
Okay, I can't prove it right now, but if all of this is as it seems, Dr. Fauci has got to be very stressed out. And if he is not stressed out, then he's even more sociopathic than we knew. he's in trouble. And I think it's time to fire Fauci.
Is Fauci directly responsible for this pandemic because he maneuvered the money, he maneuvered around the moratorium, kept this chimeric research going in China? Is he directly responsible for not just the pandemic, but also the response that's killed the economy, put, 17 to 22 million people out of work? Is Fauci directly responsible?
I'm going to say this. I think that I've seen some petitions going around. I know Dr. Shiva said that Fauci should be fired. I think that's the nicest thing that could be done to Fauci. I think he's a criminal. He's broken the law. He's going against the government. I mean, to me, that seems like it's a traitorous thing to do when the government has passed a regulation and he's at one of the highest levels in the NIH. He's got a directorship at the NIH, and then he breaks the law, he breaks the moratorium, and then funds research against something that could potentially cause harm throughout the entire world, and he's in collusion with the foreign government.
We also talked about the lab in China where I guess 3.7 million was given some time ago, and we're looking at that very closely. Chief of Staff has that pretty much under control, but it's money that, too bad it got spent there. But that was spent, what year was that, Mark? It was 4 or 5 years ago.
Over the last 6 years.
6 years ago, approximately. So we're looking at that.
So some of the things most alarming to me are Bill Gates, who's bought his way into all of the major establishment on the planet, is saying that nothing will be back to normal until we all get vaccines. And of course, he is behind all of the vaccines. That's his idea. And that's very alarming. Here's what he had to say in this video clip.
You say that if we do everything right now in terms of testing and shutting the country down, that we should have only one wave of this virus. Why are you so confident? Because a lot of people aren't so sure that we're not going to have a recurrence when we get another flu season next fall.
Well, we don't know how seasonal this virus is. It'd probably be good for the Northern Hemisphere if the force of infection goes down as we get into spring and summer, and give us some time to get both the drugs and advance the vaccine. It is fair to say things won't go back to truly normal until we have a vaccine that we've gotten out to basically the entire world. And so, the best people at the foundation who are all about high volume vaccines, are working with many manufacturers, not only on the safety and efficacy, but getting that billions of dose capacity.
What he says is that nothing will ever be back to normal until the vaccines are in place. And that seems to be what he wants us to believe as well.
What do we need to do right now in order to reopen the country to get back to, some sort of normalcy and sort of set a new normal, whatever the new normal is?
Well, I will say it's 3 phases. The acute phase we're in now, the semi-normal phase until we get a vaccine, and then the truly normal phase after the vaccine has protected all of us. That vaccine is probably late 2021. So the semi-normal period, starting whenever it does, a month, 2 months from now, will be quite long. And the idea, is that involve masks, how dense is the seating at restaurants, and the testing so that you immediately see if you have that exponential rise in any part of the country, and you can go in there and make sure that you isolate and don't get up to a lot of people infected, which would cause a lot of death.
Not everyone's too happy about his idea that we have to be vaccinated in order to go back to normal life. So everything that Bill Gates has been saying online for the last few days, everything that he said in the past, even predicting this pandemic, saying that it could kill, 10 million people, everything about him is so suspect because it seems like he pays all of these organizations almost to craft and create a certain world situation to come about. And that happens to be this virus at this time. Then he talks about the models they have.
Health advisors are talking about somewhere between 100 and 240,000 deaths over the next 2 months. Does that sound about right to you in terms of the lethality and the length of the outbreak here in the U.S.?
Well, if we do the social distancing properly, we should be able to get out of this with a death number well short of that. It's very important that those numbers are out there because a lot of people are still thinking, hey, isn't life normal? Not waking up every day to a completely new reality. And so I was very glad that those models are out there.
The models they have to predict the outcomes of what could happen when something that we're going through might take place.
Dr. Fauci's doing a very good job of saying the numbers are what count here. And, the various models that we, Imperial University, do show that without this dramatic behavior change, you could even get worse than that. But I do think if we get the testing fixed, we get all 50 states involved, we'll be below that. Of course, we'll pay a huge economic price in order to achieve that.
The modeling shows that COVID-19 arrived in Canada later than in other countries. So we're in an earlier stage of the outbreak. That means we have the chance to determine what our country looks like in the weeks and months to come. Our healthcare systems across the country are coping for the time being, but we're at a fork in the road between the best and the worst possible outcomes. The best possible outcome is no easy path for any of us. The initial peak, the top of the curve, may be in late spring with the end of the first wave in the summer. As Dr. Tam explained, there will likely be smaller outbreaks for a number of months after that. This will be the new normal until a vaccine is developed.
Now, there's information online, and I will put the URL in the description that shows that Gates Foundation has lobbied Trudeau using proxies into accepting vaccine agenda. We also find out, as of 2 days ago, one of my favorite people in the world, Sheila Gunn-Reid, reports that Trudeau gave $830,000 for COVID-19 research to the same Wuhan virus laboratory suspected of kicking off the pandemic. More and more information is now coming forward that this virus actually began in a lab. Now, I'm just one blonde girl. I don't know where it all started, but the people that do know are reporting that there's evidence towards that. What I'd like to point out is that China is the #2 economy in the world. Canada is number 10. Why are we giving them money to fund a lab that makes viruses that kills people? I don't know.
Did you know if you contract this thing, if you get this disease, did you know that your chances of recovery are 98%? This is good news. This should encourage all of us to stay engaged in the fight to beat this thing, right? So why are we not being told that sort of thing on the news every night? Why is it just the constant ticker, death, 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 adding up the numbers? Like, again, we're not experts on this. We've never gone through this before. Those numbers look terrible until you compare them to other things that have happened, other epidemics, other pandemics, and you realize it's not that out of the range of what's normal during a terrible, a season, a flu season like this. So why aren't they telling us these things? 98% chance of recovery. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
I'd like you to listen to this doctor who is irate about the amount of misinformation and fake news going on.
We know that hydrochloroquine and zinc are working great for patients. I mean, the doctor in Louisiana came out and said, hey, here's the deal. We've got patients that we're admitting to our ERs, our urgent cares, our ICUs. We're putting them on hydrochloroquine, giving them zinc, and guess what? They're getting healthier. Why are you not hearing about that? President Trump came out again yesterday and said, if you want to try it, you should try it. It's a conversation between you and your doctors. And then Fauci comes out and says, well, there's no double-blind controlled placebo study that shows that it's going to be effective. It's a drug that's already approved for stuff. We can make more. Zinc is safe and healthy and natural, okay? But they're pushing their narrative because Fauci says, we're going to get this vaccine out and we're going to make it mandatory for all of you to get. If you want to get a vaccine, that's your decision. But I still live in America. It's freedom to choose. And I choose for my medical rights what I should and shouldn't do. How many of you think it's okay that if you get diagnosed with cholesterol, they can make you take cholesterol meds? Or if you get diagnosed with some type of diseases, they have to make you take chemo and radiation. If you don't, you could maybe not get your driver's license or a business license or insurance or travel outside of the state or the country. Is that okay? I want to know if you think that's okay. I know it's Monday and I'm a little bit fired up, but this is crazy. So those of you that don't get hydrochloroquine, because your doctor either doesn't know about it, because there's no double-blind controlled placebo study, which, by the way, Dr. Fauci, is there going to be a double-blind controlled placebo study of your vaccine? Is there? Because if there is, I'd like to see it.
I looked into what the other countries were doing, and I looked into South Korea, and I found that they had treated their patients with hydroxychloroquine and zinc. I wasn't sure why, but that's what they were doing. And then there was a study that came out of France, Marseille, that they were using hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, but that was done in vitro in the test tube, not in patients. So I wanted to understand how this virus works. And it's actually the same as all viruses. A virus cannot grow on its own. It needs to get inside a person's cell, and then it hijacks the cell's machinery to reproduce. It's a real parasite, and in doing so, it kills the cell. So I started realizing that zinc is a mineral that's well known to be used when people have colds, and there's a reason behind it. It turns out that zinc inhibits a certain enzyme called the replicase. It doesn't matter the technical term, but that enzyme is within the cell involved in making copies of the genetic material of the virus. In other words, it helps the virus reproduce. It helps the virus grow in number. And zinc plugs that up. It throws a monkey wrench. It makes the virus not replicate as fast or stops it completely. But the problem with zinc, that it's a positively charged mineral and it does not cross into the cell through the cell membrane easily or at all. It's difficult for the zinc to get to the place where it needs to be able to fight the virus. So it turns out, what does hydroxychloroquine do? We're using this word a lot, but it's not magic. There is a theory behind it, a concept, which is very elegant and very beautiful. All hydroxychloroquine does is it opens a channel within the cell membrane and allows for zinc to go from outside the cell to inside the cell. Once the zinc goes inside the cell, it begins to attack the virus by not allowing it to reproduce. I had 911 patients that were diagnosed. I treated with the regimen only 350 patients. The rest were low risk. They were sent home with supportive care, and they all got better. But the 350 patients, I intervened early, immediately in my office, giving this drug regimen to these patients. And let me share with you the outcomes as of today. I had 0 deaths. I had 3 patients admitted, intubated or on a respirator. Subsequently, 1 is off now, so only 2 are still on the respirator. And I had 6 patients admitted with bacterial pneumonia to receive IV antibiotics, and 2 of which already came home. Now, let's do some statistics. Depending on which country you look at, the mortality rate in the high-risk patients is between 5 and 10%. We're an advanced country, so let's take the lower number of 5%. So out of those 350 patients, we statistically should have seen 17 dead people and a multiple of that on respirators. What did I see? 0 dead people and only 3 people on the respirator. That was a significant discovery. And I'm not claiming to find a cure. I'd rather use an analogy. Imagine a frontline soldier happens to come across some very important intelligence. And this intelligence needs to be communicated to the top general because it's going to help win the war. And I saw the significance of what this meant.
Next up, you want to prevent the virus. If your immune system is not strong enough, you don't want the virus to get into the cell. So how do you block it from getting into the cell? Well, that's where hydroxychloroquine plays a role. We've been talking about it a lot. That's the malaria drug. We believe that's one of the mechanisms by which it might play a role. I actually corresponded with Didier Raoult, the physician leading the trials in France. You know, they're going to have 500 patients on these combination with azithromycin, the Z-Pak, this week.
And there it brings me back now to the issue of some state governors and state pharmacy boards still disallowing physicians to have their hands on this medication. I don't think that it makes sound reasoning. It's something that is unprecedented in our country. We should be, as Dr. Zelenko very well said, we're at war and we need to use war tactics. And you don't tie your officers, which would be the physicians on the front lines, you don't tie their hands. You equip them so that they can give that to their patients and equip them to fight this disease.
Yeah, so absolutely we need the evidence before you can provide medication to people. We've got so many ideas from all over the world, many researchers saying, well, this drug might work or another drug might work. I think Canada is part of an international effort, and at the WHO and other international networks where they've identified really a very vast suite of potential drug therapies and combinations of drugs that are already in existence, but being repurposed, if you like, for COVID-19 treatment. So the trial that I've just talked about, which is called Solidarity, ran by the WHO, was stood up really, really fast. And one of the key drugs that they will be doing a randomized clinical trial on is the anti-malarial drugs, hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine. So that forms one aspect of that. And I think given that Canada is now part of that network, there are actually appropriate ways at which Canada can be engaged and make sure that our patients who are receiving these drugs are doing it in the most scientific and safest way possible. It is absolutely essential that you do science-based treatment, because there are so many therapies in every single pandemic. Everybody has hundreds of solutions that they think might work. We can't rule out the fact that they don't work, but let's just prioritize the top ones that the world scientists think are important, and then do proper trials. And then the results can be analyzed in real time. So I'm really excited about that.
This one is the absolute worst. I got some other stuff, but look, Ontario healthcare workers told to stop giving patients unproven Trump-touted COVID-19 treatment. March 24th, 2020, Ontario healthcare workers told to stop giving patients unproven Trump-touted COVID-19 treatment. They were advised Monday to not give patients a questionable combination of drugs that US President Donald Trump and others on social media have claimed can treat patients suffering from the novel coronavirus COVID-19. The only reason he said it was because expert doctors have found that this works. Shame on you. Shame on you. And one more, here's the star. Ontario doctors told to stop prescribing unproven drug combination touted by Donald Trump.
My message is that you should not take medication without the scientific evidence. It can be quite dangerous. These drugs are not without side effects. In fact, they're quite significant side effects, and so that people have to be really, really careful about this. Don't do it.
And when Dr. Tam says, ooh, complications could be serious, maybe for a certain small percentage of people who are taking other medications, not for the general populace. Dr. Tam, it's deceitful, it's conniving, it's manipulative, it's not accurate, it's misleading, and it does not put Canadians' lives first. And I think it's pathetic. It's pathetic. I'm sick of this. And if any more Canadians die, I hold the government and Dr. Tam personally responsible for what is happening to our citizens. I hold them responsible. Yes, I do. I want to show you a clip from a doctor, several clips that highlight his outrage over this. And he is bringing up these issues, and several of his videos have been taken down. And when you begin to see the links, people all over the world being concerned, and also like he won't mention 5G. He won't say the words 5G because he had a video removed for talking about that. So I'll mention 5G here and just say there's a lot of concerns about how that is restructuring our DNA. It is doing some very odd things to the human body, and that is a concern. It does not cause this virus, but it can be used in conjunction. And some people like to say, well, that's a conspiracy theory. And you know what? The conspiracy theory, I mean, that was created by the CIA to undermine, people asking a lot of questions about the JFK assassination. And so, conspiracy theory or not, I'm open to good information, and I want that information presented.
If there's something of this importance that's come out and nobody's talking about it, the media is not talking about it, then you have to ask yourself, what is going on? Why is the media not talking about this? Why are they not covering something so critical?
Bill Gates' father worked on the board for Planned Parenthood, and his mother worked on the corporate board for IBM, who Bill partnered with to create Microsoft. With no medical background, Bill Gates then went on to become the world's foremost pusher of vaccines and population control. Do you think this is all coincidence? The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funds the WHO, the NIH, the CDC, and the UN. And now he's saying that until we get mass vaccinations, we might never be able to gather in groups.
So I don't care which country you're from, everybody is in the same boat right now. It's this misinformation campaign from your own governmental leaders, whatever it is. There are certain governmental leaders that are good. I don't care whether you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump. That's not what this is about. I don't care whether you're pro-Biden, anti-Biden. I don't care whether you believe in the Queen of England or not. That has nothing to do with any of this. There are those that are fighting for us, and there are those that have an agenda. Fauci, Gates, and these other people within that realm, the WHO, the World Health Organization, the Centers for Disease Control, they do not have our best interest in mind. They have never had our best interest in mind. And all you have to do is open your eyes and look at the history and what they've done. Their agenda is subversive. Their agenda is to oppress. Their agenda is to control. We are having a very difficult time right now. Yes, it's chaotic. Yes, it's painful. Yes, people are scared. Yes, people have all these constraints financially, emotionally. But look what they're doing. They're trying to keep us hidden in our houses, saying, don't come out. Nobody can come out. There's a snarling pack of dogs out there called the COVID-19. And if you come out, you're going to promote it. You're going to extend it. You're going to make more people sick. And I'm telling you that you open that door, you're going to find, there's not even a poodle out there. It's a tape recording of a dog's barking. It's completely lies. Lies upon lies upon lies. These people that have died from COVID-19, they've died from other conditions, and if they did have COVID-19, maybe COVID-19 has done some damage, okay? We know it's a highly virulent strain, but it has not killed hundreds of thousands of people. They're altering tests, they're altering the death certificates. They can't justify what they've done with this pandemic situation, so they're trying to not create more deaths to justify it. They're trying to keep you hidden in your houses so you can't go out to the hospitals and see that nothing's going on, or if there's something going on, it's minimal. Hospitals are slower. In Italy, such a country that was hit so hard with COVID-19, but they're not reporting the truth that 99% of those people had comorbidities. There's all sorts of information, guys, that you need to know. The truth has to come out.
There are people that are saying that basically, what we are causing by all of this is far greater than the actual virus itself. Now, I don't know everything. I'm just reading a lot and I'm paying attention. And my research is literally about 10 hours a day. And then when I come here and I do a video for you, it's another few hours of my life. And then I have to edit it and I have to make sure that I'm presenting good information so that it's not incorrect. I feel like we're on a precipice of literally going over a cliff. If we just keep on accepting all of these things, and we don't see that there is a complete world agenda to shut down common sense, to shut down proper thinking on things, and to literally imprison us and make us isolated, if not in real prisons for doing things that go against the government's issues, but being imprisoned in our homes.
In most parts of the world, due to lockdown,
Most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household, at family level. In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them.
This is like something right out of some futuristic movie, some kind of weird James Bond villain stuff going on here. They're going to come in our house and take members of our family out, and we're not supposed to question the narrative here? We're just supposed to put the coffee filter on our face and get the purple gloves on, lock ourselves in the basement indefinitely without asking any questions, because the virus might get us.
And then things like this are going on around the world where we are being ordered to stay in. Now, again, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but I have heard doctor after doctor after doctor stating that isolating and not getting herd immunity and staying indoors and all of this is actually not the way to be dealing with this.
Bill Gates' friend, the expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, he finds a way to passive-aggressively tell us all that we're never going to get back out of this. The normal is never going to come again unless he finds a vaccine that will save us. And that's going to take a while. Because remember, this is the same guy that never did find the vaccine for AIDS that he promised he would. You see, and now we're going to wait until he finds a vaccine for this novel coronavirus. It's not going to happen. So you just left thinking, well, I guess this is it. Life's over. Never going to be the same again. The good guys are just trying to save our lives.
And in fact, what they're doing is they're setting us up for a much larger thing where they are preparing us for what they're going to be ushering in, which is taking control of all of us, totally killing the economy so that none of us can survive without the government.
I think that even a Thomistic approach to this would be that as a Catholic, as a responsible person, we would have the right to take our chances. Now I'm going to go to work. I'm 30 years old. I think I'm going to be okay. I got a 98% chance of recovery even if I do get this. And I have an obligation to feed my children to continue to work. This is not a reckless or irresponsible attitude. And yet we're not even allowed to talk about that. Why is that? What is with the 24/7 fear-mongering that's going on? We're killing our economy. We're driving millions of Americans towards financial ruin, towards suicide. All the experts are talking about this. Suicide rates are going up, drug abuse, alcoholism, domestic abuse, domestic violence, right? Because a lot of blue-collar people are being affected. They feel like they're going to lose their homes. They don't have millions of dollars. They don't have a war chest that they can just rely on for months and months and months to get them through. They're looking at their little children. Am I going to be able to even feed them a couple of months from now? You see, these are the questions. We got to ask, why is this happening? 2 years ago, 80,000 Americans died of the influenza. 80,000. If you were in a hospital, you would have seen some overcrowding. You would have seen some exhausted doctors and nurses, right? But no one was talking about that then. They weren't shutting the country down then. They weren't shutting the economy down at that point for that one. Why not? Why did the victims of that particular influenza not deserve to have the same level of concern that we're showing 24/7 now over this particular one? It's almost like it's a celebrity virus or something. This is the important one, and nothing else matters. And now you have these insufferable globalist elitists like Bill Gates. He didn't even finish college. He tells us we need a nationwide shutdown for months. And then he says we may never go back to normal again.
What does opening up look like? Which activities like schools, have such benefit and can be done in a way that the risk of transmission is very low?
Yeah.
And which activities like mass gatherings may be, in a certain sense, more optional. And so until you're widely vaccinated, those may not come back at all.
Also understand the need to keep the economy going, to keep providing for our families, and quite frankly, we know how to do that best.
We need our life back. We want to be able to work.
There's a lot of people that are hurting, not just people getting sick from this virus, but people that their entire livelihoods are being upended by this.
You got to ask yourself the question, where are you going to draw the line in the sand? How far is too far for you?
Is that the cops coming into your house and kicking open your door and forcing in a needle in your arm? Is that too far? I mean, how far are you willing to let this go?
So we wanted to bring you in because some of these protests are going to take place in your state, down in Florida. There are 10 different states where these protests will take place today alone. What do you make of that? What side do you see? Both sides, or are you leaning in one direction?
Well, Ainsley, rarely has there been a topic I've been so passionate to get on the air and discuss than this. Of course I see both sides. I have a family and I have 2 children myself. I have a mother-in-law and 2 parents that are still alive that obviously I care deeply about. My mother herself is in an extremely high-risk category. If she were to contract this, it could be deadly. But Ainsley, I have to feed my kids too. So does everybody around me. You know, and I watched that clip before the break of Nancy Pelosi seemingly confused about what protesters were doing. Well, let me enlighten you, Nancy, because you seem to be living in an insulated $25,000 freezer ice cream bubble, and you don't get it. Here it is, plain and simple. People have to feed their families. These are smart Americans who are intelligent. They understand there's a risk. They live with risk every day. If you need to understand that, Nancy, go talk to a construction worker on a construction site down the block that is living with multi-million-dollar equipment that could kill him in a minute.
Major plans to reopen U.S. Surgeon General Adams dumps Gates' predictive contagion model, Fort Russ. So Bill Gates, his contagion model, he's all behind the modeling. This U.S. Surgeon General Adams, they are planning together to get the country back on track so that they are not going to face a complete economic downfall. And I have a lot of respect and admiration for what's going on there because it's against the grain, and they're listening to the right people in order to get this done, and not the mega billionaires who think that they control the world. This is very important. So this says in Washington, D.C., in a stunning turn of events, Surgeon General Jerome Adams explained in an interview on live XM radio that the coronavirus task force has effectively dumped the Bill Gates CDC, World Health Organization, predictive contagion model, and is now working with the real data. Do you see that? The real data. And what we have is Trudeau working with the fake data. And that's Bill Gates and anything to do with the World Health Organization. This runs contrary to the out-and-out fear-mongering of Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates, who have made a media tour threatening the public that businesses may not reopen for 6 months to a year, or until and unless governments purchase their conveniently patented big pharma vaccination. According to Dr. Adams, what the American people need to know now is we actually have data, and so we're tracking the data. Before this about face, which appears to have come as an order from the Trump administration in consultation with the findings of Dr. Adams, the task force was working with predictive models, which had been created by the Bill Gates dominated WHO, World Health Organization, and CDC. Dr. Fauci's control over the CDC has been criticized in the past for its profit motive in handling a range of illnesses from HIV to H1N1. And I'm actually very, very alarmed at certain things, certain people that are not willing to stand up and fight right now, that we have a group of our population that is what I would call sheeples. And you're sheeples. You just want to accept everything that's happening, and you don't want to really look at everything that's behind the scenes and what this might be about. And I have a certain something in my spirit that is hard for me to put in words, but it's a sense that everything we know is not what it seems, and that something's going on much bigger than this virus, much bigger than just our government here in Canada, but that it's actually global. And for those who criticize Donald Trump, I absolutely have no time for this. He's the only one. He's not bought. That's what I see. He's too wealthy to be bought. He doesn't need anybody's affirmation, clearly. But he's the kind of guy that's standing up, and he uses common sense, and he declares what he sees, and he doesn't care about going against the politically correct agenda. And I really like that. And I'm listening an awful lot to what he's doing. And I suggest you do as well. Everybody, all that fake bought out media, and I'm talking they are bought out. When, let's just look at Canada. When our government can pay, $595 million to trusted media for them to say the correct talking points, I can guarantee you I'm not getting any of that money. And so what you hear when I'm speaking will be more accurate than what you are going to hear on CTV or CBC or Global. What you hear by people like myself who are beginning to report what we are seeing and finding out on the ground, that is actually more valuable than these bought out puppets. And the thing about Trudeau is he has got agendas coming which way from everywhere. Why he's paying the Wuhan lab, why he's paying media to just do his talking points, his relationship with Bill Gates, how he's buying into the vaccination agenda and how we need to shut down the world, and shut down all of Canada, and the way that he kind of gives us a lecture about it in his amateur drama teacher way. Just something's wrong. Star reports Canadians aren't rebelling against Dr. Theresa Tam's orders, but they might be starting to bristle. Yeah, I think we are starting to bristle. I think that that when you talk about that we're not going to be able to get back to normal for months and months, or maybe a year or two, how are we going to sustain that? We're kind of stuck here right now. But I think what we have to do is start speaking and start refusing to bow to social terrorism. And I am not talking about being unsafe. The virus is real. The virus can hurt certain people. But I also want to remind you of that clip of the doctor saying that they are able to deal with the virus outfall with, hydroxychloroquine and zinc, and they are able to handle the virus. But what we're seeing right now is a much bigger thing than just the virus. And I, for one, I don't want to be oblivious to something completely strange going on. And I'm not going to be. The one thing I can guarantee is that when you tune in to hear me speak, I will give you my honest opinion. At times, if I'm wrong, I'll say, you know what, I missed the boat on that, and I gave you this information and it's really this, and I'll correct it. I promise you that. I do. But what you will not get is a bought and paid for opinion here. And my eyes are wide open, and I am looking at everything from a natural perspective, from a spiritual perspective, from a worldview, and in speaking with those that I really trust in my life. And we're beginning to have a real hard look at this and say something's wrong. And we have a really big problem, because I know for my family, my husband has lost his job, and my friends are not working. Those around us, we don't have any sense of financial security. I'm not sure when the bank's going to be instituting that no mortgage payments for a few months, but has that happened for you? It hasn't happened for me yet. So what I think is that we have to be very vigilant, and we have to be wondering what's going on. And if you begin to reach out, talk with like-minded people, and if they're getting that same sense, and there's a certain something, they call it woman's intuition, but I know men have men's intuition, and you get the feeling that something's not right. I think we have to pay attention to that more than we've ever paid attention in our whole lives. Because if we don't listen to that, we might allow, through our cowardice and through our sheepleness, to just be led down a garden path that is not right. And that concerns me. So all I have to say is I'll be reporting on this more and more, and I thank you for listening. These are important days, and everything that I'm presenting to you is just for you to invest in and to question everything that's going on and to follow a gut instinct inside. For me, it's my God instinct, is what is God saying at this time? I think that's important to pay attention to.